Welcome to Journey to Novelist. This channel is devoted to new writers and those writers new to pursuing the goal of becoming a published author. And one of the things we do on this channel is talk about writing software, and this video is part of our 6-part series that we are doing that is pitting writing software against each other in these head-to-head battles. So far we have done Dabble versus Motif, Campfire versus Reezy Studio, First Draft Pro versus AutoCrit, and Noveler versus Living Writer, and we have 2 more to go. Now these all came about when I was doing my software review for 2025 at the beginning of 2025. I found a lot of online apps that you worked on through a browser and basically stored the information in the cloud. I thought it would be good to get a closer look at some of them and maybe see what the different ones had to offer. So now we're not going to talk about any software that is downloaded and installed. We're just going to focus on the online app. And what I did was I put all the ones I found into a randomizing wheel and gave it some spins to come up with the matchups. Now, one thing has changed since I started recording these, and that is this one here, this Shakespeare that's in this red wedge here is no longer going to exist as of April 2026. So it's going away. So that is basically gone. So I had to come up with something to replace it. And that brings us to today's battle, which is battle number 5, where we are going to pit Novelcrafter against Novelize. So you know a little bit more about these. These 2 programs actually have very similar pay structures. You can find Novelcrafter at novelcrafter.com and Novelize at getnovelize.com. Now, they both have free trials. Novelcrafter has a 21-day free trial, and Novelize has a 17-day free trial. The difference, other than a few extra days, is that Novelcrafter does not require you to put in any type of payment information in order to access the free trial. At the end of the 21 days, the trial just expires. Novelize, however, requires you to put in payment information for the 17-day free trial, and then after the 17 days, it automatically bills you for your subscription, whatever one you chose. Now, Novelcrafter has 4 different payment tiers. They have their scribe, their hobbyist, their artisan, and their special. But I think hobbyist is pretty much going to have what you need, and that is going to be $8.86 per month. Novelize only has one plan, and it is $9 a month. So price-wise, these are very similar. With Novelcrafter, you get a break on price if you pay annually. So that's the 2 payment structures for these 2 softwares. I have actually loaded both of them into a browser, so I've got them both loaded here and ready to go for our battle. Now, how these battles work is that I have 5 sets of tasks that you would do whenever you're writing a novel, starting with project setup. And we're going to look and see if these 2 programs can accomplish these tasks and then award points. Now, like the project setup, I say that it should be pretty easy for them to get 3 points, and if they do really well, they could get more than 3 points. And that's pretty much how the tasks work. So we're going to go ahead and look at these. Now, we're looking for things that are intuitive. I don't want software that I'm going to have to spend several months figuring out the ins and outs of how it works just to be able to start writing my novel. I want to be able to jump in and start writing and pretty much be able to find anything I need. And if I can't find it right away, I'm going to assume it's not there, or it's so hard to use I won't remember from book to book how to get there, and it will cost me more time than it's worth to actually use that feature. So let's go ahead and go through project setup. We want to be able to start our novel project and possibly put it as part of a series, because the sample book that we're working on is part of a series. And then we want to be able to put in a pen name, because if you work in multiple genres, you might have a different pen name for the different genres so your readers don't get confused. And then we'd want to hopefully have a date. The title is pretty much a give me because you usually set that during the project setup. And then maybe a subtitle. And then if we can, we would like to have a structure or some sort of template to follow when we're writing the novel to make sure we hit all the major points and to kind of help get us on the right track when organizing our novel and getting it all planned out. So we're looking for those kind of things in the project setup. So let's go ahead and go right into the browser and look at Novelcrafter. This is the dashboard for Novelcrafter, and you'll see right here, this is where you can create a new novel. Now we're taking note of the fact that there is a place where you can import a manuscript, because there is a place where they will get a point for that a little later. Now, the first time I went into this software, I went ahead and created a novel, and then I realized that there is this button up here that says series. We're going to go series, and we're going to make a new series. In this case, I don't have to, because I already have the series created, which is called Lost in Between. And now I can actually create a novel under this series. So I'll go to novels, and here is the create novel button, or again, there's that import. So I'm going to go ahead and create a novel. Now it gives you a little dialogue to fill in. So we're going to put in our title name. And my pen name is JT Noveler. Now I could change this here if I needed to. I went ahead and set this in my actual account settings to be my username, so it pops up automatically. Here's the series, Lost in Between, and I can actually even put in the book that this is within the series. So I'm going to say this is book 1. And it asks me for the language I'm writing in, which is English. And that's all we need to do here. So I just create novel, and there I have a novel created. So that was pretty easy. So I got my novel project, I got my series, I got my pen name. I did not see a place for a genre, but my title's there, and I didn't see a place for a specific date. So we've got part of our setup done. And let's go ahead and go over into Novelize and get at least this far in that program. So like I said, I have been in these a little bit to play around with them, and whenever I was doing that, it made these notebooks, and it won't let me delete them. Just so you know, it says there's a server error and it won't let you delete it. I don't think they're letting you delete the last thing that you have into your account for some reason. But we're just going to go ahead and hit new novel. And that's going to give us a place to create our new novel. And again, we have a dialog box that we can fill out that we're working with. So again, we'll put in our title. And here we get to pick the genre. So I'm going to pick fantasy. I have a place for a subtitle. So I'm going to put Lost in Between. And I'm going to change this to say book 1. Author. This could also be my pen name. So it's going to default to what I have for my user settings. So it defaulted to JT Noveler. And then I can pick a notebook that goes along with this particular book, so that if I have multiple books in the series, I might use the same notebook for it. And like I said, I already have this notebook called Deadpan Notes, so we'll just use that. If not, I just hit this new notebook and create a new notebook. Then once again, here is information for importing if I already have some stuff to import into this new book. And then it lets you set some weekly and daily writing goals, as well as a total word count goal for this book. I'm going to go ahead and create novel. We now have a novel. Now, what did we have in here? We could create our project and we put it as part of a series. We had our pen name, so that's the same as novelcrafter. They're going to need the same points for that. We did have an option to do a genre though, although we did not have a place for a subtitle. So they pretty much come out equal on that. We're down here now to the structure template part of this project setup. And so far I haven't seen anything for either one of these for structure or template. So let's go ahead and go back to Novelcrafter and see what we can see over here in Novelcrafter for some sort of a template. You're in a planning stage whenever you start your book. Here's the planning stage. You also have write, chat, and review. So here's the planning stage. And the planning stage has a grid view, a matrix view, and an outline view. So this is where we're going to start kind of deciding how the project is planned out. And I did realize that if you come in here to the create from outline, there are some common templates for outlines here. So this would count as having a structure template to try to follow. I could pick any of these and it kind of gives you a breakdown of how it works here. So here's the story circle. So I think I would go with the story circle because it breaks it down pretty well. And if I say create, it actually created sort of an outline with some chapters and these act headings to help me plan my story out. So that works as a template. We need to find something similar in Novelize if we can. And I have to say, I didn't really see anything. There is this workspace here, but this is do-it-yourself. This is not, I mean, it just has the beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't have a template to actually load up. You could, of course, make your own and import it, and that would give you a place to start. But I didn't see a default outline area. We have our organize, we have our write, and we have outline, but again, nothing in there has to do with a story structure. So they can't have a point for story structure. So that means when we look at our project setup, I am going to give Novelcrafter 4 points for what they've managed to do with their project setup. And I'm going to give Novelize 3 points just because they really don't have a structure template to load. Other than that, they're pretty equal in what they have for a project setup. So let's move on to our next section, and that is the plotting and planning. And I think both of these programs fall a little short on some of the plotting and planning as far as planning out beats for your story and how you can go about doing that. So let's go ahead and look at the softwares again. So back to the browser. And for Novelize, you have this outline section that you can create summaries of what your story is, summarize what happens in the beginning part of your story, summarize what you put in the middle of the story. You can even start laying out some chapters and scenes here to kind of build an outline. But there's no way to really do beats unless you use a scene for each beat. You could possibly use the notebook and use the events area to start putting your beats here in the events. That's one way you could possibly do it, but it's not really built for that. So I would say that there's not very much here in Novelize having to do with your major story beats and laying them out. With Novelcrafter, we come in here and we look for something similar for story beats or planning, and we do have this whole section here. We also have different ways to view it. We have a grid view, which moves everything into cards, and you have your acts, and you could always add additional acts if you need to. You also have the ability to come over to your codex, and you can create entries, and in this entries there is a section for creating subplots. So you could quickly do some subplots. So I could put a romance subplot here, and I could maybe also, let's add another one, murder subplot that we're following as well. Maybe those things, two threads are running through the overall. So for this plotting planning section, neither one of them has a ton of stuff. They're very similar in that they just give you a place to put your chapters and scenes, and you can give descriptions. They don't have a lot for story beats or plot lines or timelines, or so they're going to get very similar points on this. I'm going to go ahead and give Novelcrafter 2 because they do have like the subplot things to the side, and I'm going to just give Novelize 1 because they do have some place to put your chapters and scene summaries. So they each just get a couple points for that. So let's go ahead and move on to the character and setting creation. And this is an important area because this is where you start defining things that are specific to this particular story. The character and the setting, and this also includes a lot of other stuff, maybe the laws and the other world building type stuff. So we want to be able to definitely set up characters and settings because that's something that every book has. We'd hopefully like to have some questionnaires or templates to help guide us in creating these things so that we don't have to come up with everything off the top of our head. Hopefully we can have some place we can put some images, maybe like what certain buildings or people look like, what their clothing looks like, things like that for reference. place to put some notes, maybe a place to put maps so we know what the world looks like, especially in a fantasy series. Having some maps to get you situated in the world can be really handy. And we want to maybe be able to even track important objects. So we want to be able to, define our objects and kind of keep track of them. So that's what we're looking at for in this character and setting creation. 7 points should not be too hard to get, but let's see where these two programs fall in this. Back to our browser, and we will go into novelcrafter and look and see what they have. And we know we have this codex here, and we've already seen that we could put subplots in. And if you were paying attention, when I hit the new entry, there are also settings for characters, locations, objects, lore, and other stuff. So let's do a character. I'm going to do 2 characters really quickly. I'm going to do Devin, who is our main character, and I could give him like aliases if I need to, and I could write a description. And then down here at the bottom, this add details will let you put other things into this here. So if I say add details, manage custom details, I can look for new details and say I want to put his physical appearance in there, and maybe I want to put his story role as part of it. And for characters, I also want to put have a place for their backstory and maybe their voice sheet, so I know how they talk. So I'm going to put those things in there. I'm going to close this, and now when I go to do Devin, I can put this here. This is his backstory. That's about his family. And then I can add these other items that are now in my list of things that are available for characters. And that gives me places to put those. 5'11" with, let's say, dark blonde hair. And then here I can actually upload a little picture if I want. And I'm just going to use this little AI created one. Now this is a character for a different book, but I'm going to use it for my sample here. There we go. We have a character here. And then I'll just quickly create another one. And then I could create a new entry for a location. Let's just do the office. And again, I could put a picture here. So now I have an office, and maybe even create that object, which would be my gate key. So that case takes care of creating characters and settings. We have some questionnaires because we have those different fields we can fill in. Images, all we have is the little icon image. There's no place else to put images in Novelcrafter that I could find. Nothing for bigger ones, no place for maps. We can also add in objects. Now notes, if we want to put in notes, we actually could create an entry here for other and use that as notes if we wanted to. So I think between the chats and just having an other that maybe you just called note. And of course there's always the research area, which is notes. So if it was for Devin, then he would have a note section. The office would have a note section. You could have notes for the various subplots. So you can have all that. So that works pretty well. The one thing it does seem to be missing is images. Be able to put larger images in there somewhere. So they've done pretty well. Now let's go to Novelize and see what they have in the character creation. So we have this notebook side over here, and we do have, which is similar to the Codex, we have the characters. So I could create a new character, and we already have some characters in my notebook that I've created. We have Devin, and I used a different image, so let's go ahead and change this image out and make it the same as in the other one. We have male, and you'll see that they have some fields to fill out: personality, mannerisms, conflicts, family, that kind of things to fill out for the character. So it's a pretty good character sheet. We also have groups. So if we had like a religious group or some sort of organization that we wanted to keep track of, we could create one of those. We have locations. We put the office in here. So if I say edit, you see that there's a place for a short description and some details. And I've added in the image. We have major events. So this would just be the gate close, when the gate closed. We put that there. I could put an image if I wanted. And if I wanted to assign certain dates for these events to happen, I could put dates on there. So there we go. We also have items, so we've added the gate key like we did in the other one. And I could add a gate key thing. And then we have a place for general notes, and you could use this to keep track of things like holidays in the world or any of those other research items you might need for your story. So it does have notes as well. So that is what Novelize has. They have characters and settings, same as with Novelcrafter. They're pretty equal there. They both have templates and questionnaires. They both have locations. They're both missing images and maps, but they both have places for notes and both have places for objects. So they are exactly the same in points for this character and setting creation. They are both getting 6 points for this section. They're losing a point because there's no place to put larger images. So let's move on to our next set of tasks, and that is the writing environment. We want to look at how we create chapters and scenes and rearrange them when we need to. We want to look and see if spell check is available. We want to look to see if we have any control over fonts or backgrounds or margins or speed. And we're going to assign some points based on these things for these two softwares. So let's go back in here and we'll just start with Novelize since we are here. And we will go from our outline section into our write section since we're looking at our writing environment. And you see here we have a place where we can start writing our chapter. Now I can come over here to manage and summaries to kind of get an overview. So here's my summaries if I need to. There's only the one chapter. Here's the contents, one chapter, one scene. So I can use that to kind of get an overview of what I have in this area. If I want to add a chapter, I can hit this button. If I want to add a scene, I can hit this button. If I want to attach some notes to this chapter, I can hit this notes button. Or actually it would be for this scene. So let's go ahead and come back out to our outline real quick. And we're just going to go ahead and see what we're working with here. We have a place for chapters and scenes right here in our outline. We also have it in our write area, and I think we also have it in our organize. I don't think you can create, you can only move things around. And since we only have one thing here, there's nothing to move. Let's go ahead and go to our write, and we will go ahead and add a chapter. Let's go ahead and add a chapter 2, and then we'll just quickly add another chapter, and that will be chapter 3. You'll see it just numbers them, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but we can actually give them chapter names. Let's call this Promotion Day, Gate Day, and we'll call the last one New Home Day. So if we go to organize here, you'll see we have our chapters and we have our scenes, and we can move our chapters around and organize. So that's the rearranging of chapters. We come to our outline. You'll see them also here, and we could quickly add scenes in here. So maybe we have a scene tile that's cut through woods, and here we go. We have checked, and a spell check is working. So we can click this, and then I'm going to add another scene here for game day, gate day, that says first look. And then another scene that is first step. And here I'm just going to add a couple of things so we can keep track of them. So if we go over here to organize now, you'll see we have our different chapters and our different scenes. Now maybe this first step is actually part of this. So I could take and move this all the way to new home. And then maybe that becomes the first part of it. So moving things around is pretty easy in Novelize as far as your scenes and your chapters. You get just a good overview in your organized area, and then in your right, you have everything laid out here. Now, everything is just sequential, but you should be able to jump to different areas using this contents bar to jump to the area where you want to write. And like I said, you can always put notes here. So we have that. So that covers the creating a chapter and a scene and rearranging the parts and editing the text. That's pretty easy to do. The spell check is on. So what about the fonts, backgrounds, margins? Now, as far as speed of movement, I think it's pretty responsive for using Novelize, but what about that fonts and backgrounds? And if there is anything for that, it's probably going to be under your account section. So let's go to the account, and you'll see here we go. We have a light theme and a dark theme, I believe, that we can choose from. So I'll update settings there, and there's the dark theme. And then I can choose whether I'm sans serif, serif, or let's go change that back to light theme, and the font size. So I could change this down to 10 or up to 16 and go ahead and update that. So now it's a serif font instead of a sans serif. So for the writing environment, I think they checked all the boxes. So I think Novelize does pretty well. So let's go ahead and see how Novelcrafter does in the same arena. So let's go here, and we're in our write area. So we've moved from planning to writing, and here are our chapters. See, it's kind of the same thing as in Novelize. It is a scrollable section of your chapters with your scenes, and of course you can just add new scenes here as you need them, and you can also add new chapters. At the end of each act, there's a place for because here's Act 4, and then there's a new chapter, and then there's Act 5, some scenes and a new chapter. So you can do it that way if you like, or you can come back into your plan, of course, and add new scenes in here. So if our chapter 1 included that scene, let's edit scene 1. Then we're back in plan, there's the scene. And then of course we can view them in the matrix, which the matrix we did not look at earlier, but you'll see for each of the characters, you'll see the chapters and scenes, and you can add scenes for a particular character in here. So under promotion day, I could add a scene that is specific for covering what happens to Devin, or from Devin's point of view. And then maybe chapter 2, I add a scene that is for Katie. And it has these tags that are automatically applied. I can also do it for locations, scenes that happen at different locations. And I could do it for the subplots if I wanted. So that's ways you can like keep track of whether your scene has to do with a particular beat of your story. So that is really handy, and I have to give them an extra point for being able to add those tags in there for those scenes and make it easy to identify why the scenes are being created. So that's pretty handy to have. So what about spelling and the fonts and backgrounds? With Novelcrafter, you'll see a lot of these things where there is this AI field here for languages, point of views, and you can actually use AI to help you develop certain parts of your story. And it's set up to use AI for helping you do this. So even like when you're in a character, you'll see a place where you can get help doing nicknames by AI, help with a description with AI, help with a backstory. There's a lot of that in Novelcrafter. they're very heavy into the use of AI to help develop your story. So I just wanted to mention that while we were going through these different things. But there's nothing here, right here in the chapter or scene to say, write this scene for me. I think most of the AI stuff is in the prompts for helping to develop other things. So helping you to do all these things, rephrase things, shorten things, text replacements. There's a lot of things in here that you can use AI for. However, the caveat with that for the novelcrafter is that you have to bring your own access to AI. You would actually have to go to some sort of AI engine, pay to get a key to use it, and then set it up with a novelcrafter to use it within novelcrafter. So that's something to keep in mind in the whole writing part of novelcrafter. But let's just check and see if I misspelled the word scene. So spell check is there, and I can change my words back. Okay, so we can create chapters, rearrange parts, edit spelling, fonts and backgrounds. I know that I saw earlier. I don't think I showed it, but let's go back in here one more time. Might be under here. Here we have the choice to go to a dark theme, same as in Novelize. You also have your AI connections, which I was talking about, all the different AI connections you could add and of course pay for yourself. You also have general settings. Let's go back to light. So I didn't see anything specifically for font. Oh, it would be up here on the side. Here's format. So here we could change the different fonts. They've got a few to choose from. So you could change your font family. Maybe go to Barlow. And you also have focus mode, which is a handy thing to have right there, which removes some of the clutter. So for the writing environment, I'm going to give the edge to Novelcrafter. I think they have the tagging to move scenes into different subplots or assign them to for different characters, so you can use that. So I'm going to give them 5 points, and I'm going to give Novelize, I'm going to go ahead and give them 4 points. I think they did pretty well. So let's go ahead and move into our final section, and that is our file and project management. And we'll see how these programs can work here. So we want to see if we can import text, which we already know both of them have options for importing text. We saw that when we were doing project setup. So we're just going to give them both a point for importing text at this point. Exporting text and all the backups and versionings, that's the only thing that we would have different on these programs. So let's go ahead and go back to the browser and look for that kind of thing. Here you can export your notebook, so all of your notes that you have in your story, you can export them. If I come here to manage, I can export the entire novel. So that is another thing I could do. So I can export my notes and I can export my novel. Whenever I come to the dashboard, if I go back to my dashboard, you'll see I can also export from here. I can also archive the story. So those are two things I can do. And again, I could also download the notebook here. So the only thing I don't specifically see is backups, but whenever you're in there, when you're writing, there is this scene history, and you can see the last version of the scene. So let's find one I wrote something in. So if I didn't come here and take this and say, true look at the gate. There we go. And I look at the scene history, you'll see the history of it. So this is the first look at the gate, and then there's nothing before that. So if I come back here and I change this again, I change this and say, and I realized it was wrong, I could say, oh, let's look at the scene history. I like this one, so I could copy this and come back here and like paste this back in. So I'm going back to that version. So there is some archiving or backups per scenes in Novelize. So I'm going to give them a point for making that really easy to do. In novelcrafter, as far as backups and things like that, you can come in here to your book. Let's go to settings, and you can archive your novel here. You can also export it here, and you can choose which scenes and things you want to do, whether or not you want to include the codex or not, all the chats and everything. So you get to choose. So that works really well too. So I think they're pretty much equal here. I think I will give the slight edge to Novelize. So overall for this file and project management, I'm going to give novelcrafter 3 points and Novelize 4 points. They get the slight edge here for the file and project management. So overall, that means novelcrafter is going to end up with 20 points, and they are going to be our winner over Novelize, which ends up with 18 points. Both of them have very similar functionality when it comes down to the very end of it, although they handle things in a slightly different way, and their feel is different just because of their graphics. With, again, if you look at the different formats, you've got all black and white stuff here, and here you've got the orange, and you've got your toolbar at the bottom. So it's a little different feel for the two different programs. But they both have a scroll of scenes through here, and they both have the plan where you can see everything. It's just they break things down differently. Overall, I think novelcrafter comes out a little bit ahead. So if this video was helpful for you, please like and subscribe. I have one more of these videos to do, and that will be coming as soon as I get to it. I'm hoping to wrap it up before the mid part of the year, and hopefully be able to go do an overall software update like I did in 2025, just giving you a list of everything I can find, so to keep you informed on what's out there. So hope to see you next time here on Journey to Novelist.